Okay, so let's get back to our randoms. We got 23 randoms left. Next one is going to be 13. What is 13? Okitsura. Absolutely no clue what this is. It's definitely an abbreviation for something, but I have no clue what it's an abbreviation for, so let's find out.
Eh, it's fine. It's really not. It's not interesting, but it's not like bad in any way. I think I got like 2/3 through the first episode or something. I didn't check the time code, but the bulk of the comedy is guy does not understand Okinawan customs. Oh, right. This is the show Okitsura. It's about the guy who transfers to a school in Okinawa and falls in love with one of the people who lives there, one of the girls in his class that lives there. But he can't understand what she's saying half the time. I forgot what the name of the language is, but it's she speaks that most of the time, and so you can only he can only understand about probably 30 to 40% of what she says. And I really don't like how they visually portray that, because they just, like, most of the time when anime has someone speaking a language that's not Japanese, either they just don't subtitle it at all and leave the viewer to figure out what it means on their own, or they'll have it in like like they'll actually subtitle it in Japanese either on the bottom of the screen or the right side of the screen. This show does the Japanese subtitles on the bottom of the screen, but also it will have like big block subtitles in Japanese, to the point where they're not even subtitles anymore. I guess you would just call them captions, because they take up giant chunks of the middle of the screen, and it's kind of distracting because, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just because of, like, me as a Western viewer, because I don't read Japanese very well. They do subtitle those, or I guess they caption the Japanese captions, and so the screen is just fucking covered in text at that point. So I can't necessarily say that it's a fault of the anime itself, just a fault of, like, an English-speaking person consuming a work in Japanese that is about someone speaking Okinawan. So we are like 3 levels deep on languages. But the actual, like, comedy of it isn't, like, very funny, I guess. It's sort of like hey, that was a misunderstanding. I see how that goes. Like, calling someone by their last name and finding out that it's the last name of basically everyone on the island is just sort of like, oh, that's a neat little fact. Or like mispronouncing her name in a way that sounds like it's a confession or something. It's sort of like, that's fun. Now, granted, I am coming off of 100 Girlfriends Season 2, so anything that's not like gut-bustingly hilarious is not going to, it isn't coming into a fair fight, I guess. But it's also like, it should at least get like something out of me, I guess. Just more than just like a, I get it. Um, yeah, it's just kind of a, this show's just kind of okay. The editing is kind of wonky at times. And the way stuff is framed, even without the text, looks kind of weird at times. Character designs are interesting. I'll give it that much. Yeah, I really don't have. It's just, I don't really have anything else things about it. It's just kind of not interesting. I would love to just learn about Okinawan culture in comparison to I should also learn more about Japanese culture, but it's not. This is not the anime to do it, unfortunately.
Okay, Okitsura coming off the list. Let's roll the random number generator again. Up next is number 1. What is number 1? GiruMasu. This is the one about the guild receptionist, I think, which is either an isekai or just a regular fantasy series. This one got a decent chunk of promotion in the lead up to the season, but I don't think I really know anybody who watched it. Let's find out what it do.
Man, that was actually close to being good. Not very close, mind you, but close. I got 5 episodes into GiruMasu, which is... I'm not even going to try and remember the full title for this one. Long and short of it is, all of the gimmick part of the story was actually pretty good. Like, the idea of, like, the main character is, like, the receptionist at a guild. Like, processing paperwork for adventurers, approving quest applications and stuff like that. And it's like, her whole goal is to just get through work and get through stuff without, like, to get out of work on time without doing overtime. And then we see her, like, constantly working into the night doing overtime and stuff. All that part of the show is really good, actually. Just the disdain that she has for the customers that she serves, the, like, little petty details of interacting with adventurers and how they don't understand why this pisses her off when they do certain things. All that stuff, really good. Here for it. Also, the voice cast for this show, man. Like, it's not just Rie Takahashi as Alina, our main character, but that is certainly a large part of it. This might actually be one of her best voice acting performances that I've ever seen. She handles the disdain of an office lady so well. And just, there's such a wide range to the emotions that she displays and a little bit of nuance to it as well. And just, like, the guttural hatred that she's able to convey with her voice at times is so fucking fun to listen to. She is, like, 90% of the reason to watch this show. And it's not just her either. Like, Yu Serizawa is the other main guild receptionist girl, and she's also very good. This bubbly, airheady kind of girl. And then Aoi Koga is, like, the healer for, like, the big party in this one. Hers is a little bit, I would say, is a little bit more divisive in terms of, like, the quality of her performance. But, like, it's Aoi Koga. She's got the really high, nasally kind of voice. You've heard her in so many other things. I just can't think of one particular role off the top of my head. But you would recognize her voice immediately. But even then, it's still a pretty decent performance for what it's trying to give. The guys are alright in this show. In terms of voice acting. But, like, there's some really solid voice acting in the show. And the guild receptionist part is really good. The problem with this show is everything else. Like, when it remembers that it is a fantasy anime. And it's like, because, like, the other half of this show is she's a guild receptionist who wants to clock out on time. And so, but she's also been bestowed, like, a super high level skill that gives her, like, a fucking warhammer that she swings around like nobody's business. And she just fucking one-hits floor bosses and shit. And so she, like, the opening scene of the show is, like, her crushing a dragon's skull with a warhammer because the fucking adventurers don't know how to clear the dungeon properly, and so it's causing more work for her. Very funny bit. Everyone else that she interacts with in this show fucking sucks. The adventurers are either bland, annoying, or just fucking stupid. They're like, in episode 5, it's like this guy gets a shot in on like this giant wolf thing, and then he turns around to the party and starts having like a fucking conversation with him, and then he just gets fucking slashed across the chest because he wasn't paying attention. I'm like, fucking good, man. That's what you get, fucking idiot. Like, there's a ton of that. The battles are horribly paced. There's really not a lot of strategy involved in them. It's just sort of hit thing until it die. And the boss for what I assume is the end of the first light novel in episode 4, this dark god guy, fucking sucked. He's so fucking lame and boring. He actually had a terrible voice acting, if I'm being honest. It was super bland and dumb sounding. Also, like, they established it's like he absorbed like a super regeneration ability, and so Jade, the leader of like the super good adventure party, is like, you have to kill him in one shot in order to defeat him. And so I counted how many shots it took for Alina to defeat him. 4! 4 shots! Not 1. Then there was no regeneration in between. 4. So, fuck that. Also, the world building for this show is so lame and dumb and just not interesting in any way whatsoever. I do not care about this world at all in comparison to like other fantasy worlds. I wanted to like this one because it had a really fun premise. Reminded me of like Handyman Saito a little bit, in that it's a fantasy D&D it's a D&D style fantasy. I know that's technically not what they're called, but that's just what I'm going to say because it's like the best comparison. Let's call it a TTRPG style fantasy where it's got like these or even let's call it a JRPG style fantasy or some, let's call it a class-based fantasy anime. We'll go with that to be as broad as possible. It is a class-based fantasy anime with a specific gimmick that lets it stand out from the pack. And the gimmick is really good. And everything else is mediocre at best. And it ends up getting in the way of the gimmick stuff. Like, one of the things, like, once they find out Alina's like the super high level person with the super awesome skill, like, they're like, we need to take you with us to conquer this new dungeon that just popped up. And she's like, no fucking way. And then the guy's like, I'll double the number of receptionists at the guild hall. And she's like, fine. And then we don't see the results of that after that arc wraps up. Like, there's no payoff for that. We don't see, like, the new recruits and everything. We don't get the part of Alina going like, it's so nice having so many other people to take the burden off. So, they just completely forgot about that plot point. Wanted this to be good, but it's just not.
Okay, GiruMasu coming off the list. Let's roll that random number generator again. How many do we have left? 21. So let's see what the next show is. It is 5. What is 5? The daily life of a middle-aged online shopper, ... Okay. This could be literally anything. It could be a fucking isekai for all I know. Let's find out.
Why the hell did I watch 6 episodes of that? I got through a little over 6 episodes of what the fuck is middle-aged online shopper in another world? This might be one of the ugliest anime I've ever seen. Full stop. It is definitely the ugliest anime that I have watched more than 3 episodes of. That is absolutely the case. This show looks fucking horrendous. The actual animation is janky, barely there, and just not good. The action scenes fucking suck shit. The character designs are barely holding it together. Color design's not great. The shot composition is just not right a lot of the time. And like the way that it fucking jerks the camera around sometimes to simulate movement is fucking nauseating. This is just one of the worst looking anime I've ever seen. Now, I can actually answer the question of why I watched 6 episodes of this. But I should start by saying, why did I watch more than 1 episode of this? Or even more than 5 minutes of this? Because from minute 1, it is very obviously one of the worst looking anime you've ever seen. But I think they know that. I think they knew, the people who are making this anime, they knew they were not working with all of the resources they needed. And so this director got clever. Because, like, as soon as I clocked that this was an isekai, I was like, okay, how long are we going to spend on the fucking reincarnation scene or whatever? I swear to God, it's like less than 15 seconds. It is the fucking quickest current world to new isekai world I have ever seen. Almost too quick. Because, boy, it just speeds through all the information that it would be necessary to understand that. This is for advanced isekai watchers only. Which is probably the only people who would want to watch this kind of show. But the actual, like, editing in that scene, cut together with, like, the music, if I recall correctly, they might have used fucking 2001, the 2001 overture, if I'm recalling correctly. They used, it's a very striking orchestral opening. And it's just, this reincarnation and introductory scene is edited so uniquely that I was just like, well, they clearly don't have the animation chops, but maybe they have the directing chops. They don't. They don't. It's not. That's like the only scene of note in this entire first half that I've seen. But what this show does have is ideas. So many ideas. Perhaps too many ideas. That it just... Sorry, it's like almost midnight when I'm recording this. It has so many ideas that it just throws at you. Constantly. Forever. At least for like the first arc. Like the first 4 episodes. Now, that is like one of the things that I appreciate about anime as a medium, is that just it will just give you ideas to think about. Little, like, whether they're like big, grandiose ideas or just little tiny details that make you like think. it just constantly hits you with new information over and over and over again. And so you're just like, well, what's that going to lead to? Oh, well, what's that going to lead to? Oh, well, what's that going to lead to? And it never leads to anything like super momentously interesting, but it's like mildly entertaining for as fucking dog shit as it looks. Also, this dude, this main character, fucks more women in the first 3 episodes than any other character I've seen in the past 6 months. Now, I realize that fucking 2 different women is not that high a number. However, we are working with anime here. The bar is in the fucking gutter. So, if you fuck 2 mildly attractive anime women in the first 3 episodes, I'm in your corner. And it's like, he's not even trying. He just acts like a nice dude and has his overpowered isekai online shopping skill that impresses the fuck out of everyone. So both, like, the innkeeper and this cat lady are like, oh, this dude knows what's up. I gotta get in good with him. And then they fuck. Granted, they don't show any of it. And to be honest, considering some of the fan service scenes later in the show, I'm kind of glad they don't show any of it. Because again, this show looks like fucking dog poo-poo. But I guess what eventually got me to lose interest is that you can only throw ideas at me so much before it just becomes repetitive, that you're just throwing ideas at me and that's it. Like, if you have seen this show, I dropped it when the giant bear monster showed up in the middle of the woods, because the main character's fight with that bear monster, is so fucking stupid. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be comedic, but it was just weird instead. Boy. Anyway, good on him for fucking the innkeeper and the fucking cat lady. He didn't fuck the merchant's daughter, though, so poo-poo on you. Anyway, next.
Okay, middle-aged online shopper off the list. Down to 20 randoms for the season. Let's see what we roll next. It's going to be 5. What is 5? Magic Maker. How to make magic in another world. Okay, back-to-back isekais. Have not heard anyone talk about this at all. Fuck it, let's just jump in.
Oh my god, that's so fucking boring. So boring. I got through like half an episode of Magic Maker, and I'm bored out of my mind. Maybe it's just coming off of the absolute fucking non-stop nonsense of the online shopper one from the last segment, but like, God, this show's boring. It's so incredibly tedious and stretched out. Based on what I've gathered from the premise, it's a guy who has isekai'd into this world as a newborn, and it's a fantasy world that has like monsters and fairies and stuff, but it doesn't have magic. And so based on the title, it looks like he's going to be creating magic from scratch, which sounds like a really cool idea. But if it's gonna be this fucking boring, then maybe it's not such a good idea. It's just approaching it in a very bland and not like very energized kind of way. For one thing, it's the POV character is the isekai guy's new older sister. Which, by the way, there are 2 time jumps in the first half of this first episode. Like, the show starts with the mom bringing home a baby, and he's got an older sister who's like, I assume like 3 or 4 years older than him at this point, so let's say that. And then there's a 3-year time skip, and suddenly they're the same height. So he, who is a 3-year-old, is suddenly the same height as someone who's like 6 or 7. And then there's another 3-year time skip, and they're still the same height. So, kid who is like 6 is the same height as a girl who's like 9 or 10. Makes no sense. And like, yeah, it doesn't look as fucking dog shit as the last show. And like, it's got some nice sunset lighting and stuff. Character designs are pretty decent. But it's not like incredible looking either. It's got some like eyeline issues here and there, and a really fucking terrible CG horse. Oh, and I got jump scared by the editing in this. Like, there was one cut in the opening scene of this that was so bad that it fucking freaked me out. Just really bad editing in that instance. Yeah, this is just... it's just not interesting enough to continue.
Alright, Magic Maker coming off the list. Got 19 randoms left. Let's see who the next lucky winner is. It is 15. What is 15? I'm a noble on the brink of ruin. Something, something. I guess we're doing some more fantasy stuff. Probably. Haven't heard anyone talk about this, I don't think. Let's see what the deal is.
God, it's always this type of show that I struggle to really say anything interesting about, because, like, it's competent, but it's doing quite literally nothing new that, like, makes it stand out from the 8,000 other isekai that exist around it. And, like, competent doesn't necessarily mean, like, interesting. All of the dialogue has been pretty boring and rote so far. Really, the only thing that actually stands out about this show is that the guy who gets isekai'd keeps fucking screaming in shock every time he learns something new about this noble son that he's been reincarnated into. And it's so annoying. And I have literally nothing else to say. I got like a little over 5 minutes in, and I was just like, why am I watching this? Like, what is here for me? Is there literally nothing interesting that you can show me other than the same thing that I have seen 1,000 times already? It's like, cinematography's not interesting at all. Character designs aren't interesting at all. It has nothing. I don't get it. I don't get how these shows get made. I really don't. There's nothing here.
Okay, Noble on the brink of ruin. Coming off the list. Let's roll that random number generator again. This time it's going to be 13. What is 13? Blue Miburo. This is another one of the 2 core ones that carried over from last year. I know nothing about it. I think it's an action show or something. I think wolves are involved. I honestly have no clue, so let's find out.
Okay, apparently this is another one of those late Bakumatsu, early Meiji historical fiction pieces involving the Shinsengumi that has a shocking amount of anime entries. Which I guess is not for nothing. It's a pretty important, one of the most defining moments in Japanese history, if not the most defining moment, probably. It's definitely it's definitely up there. But also, I need to learn more about it because I really don't know much about Japanese history. I always say that I'm going to learn more, and then I just never do. But anyway, this is a Maho Films anime. You know how we feel about Maho Film. They suck. Like, literally, like, the probably second or third shot of this first episode, it's like a downward angled shot of kids talking to, like, an old man, but, like, the skin tone of the children is, like, almost the exact same color as the ground, and it looks so blown out color-wise that it's just really fucking gross to look at, and it's just not, it's not pleasant to partake in artistically. Also, I noticed, like, the lip flaps and, like, mouth movements in this are kind of weird for some reason. Like, the mouths are, like, too big when they talk sometimes. Like, especially, like, the kid characters. I think it's their attempt to make the kids, like, more sympathetic and moe, I think. But it just comes across as, like, what's the... Uncanny Valley-ish? Anyway, it's kind of boring. Hijikata is in this for a decent chunk from what I've seen so far. But here's the thing. Again, don't know anything about the Shinsengumi, really, other than that they were the state police force, essentially. And the only time I've ever seen the Shinsengumi represented in a way that was interesting was Gintama, because it's a comedy parody thing. So I don't care that Hijikata's in it, because he means nothing to me as a historical figure. I'm sure if I was Japanese it would mean something, but not really. Not for right now. And also, they're setting up, like, so many fucking death flags for at least two of the characters in this. And they're really laying it on thick. And I'm like, come on, guys. You don't have to be that fucking heavy with it. You don't have to lay it on that thick. Like, we get it. Anyway, this show is boring and not good looking. I have no interest in it at all, especially for two cores. It's just not really all that engaging at all.
Alright, Blue Miburo off the list. Let's roll again and see what we get. It's going to be 10. What is 10? I want to escape from princess lessons. I heard this one was not good. Hopefully it's not good. Maybe it's more like the fucking... What was that princess one from last year? The Tis Time for Torture Princess? Maybe it's funny along those lines? We'll see.
So I was looking at the key visual for this one, and I was like, alright, the main girl looks kind of cute. Maybe this will at least have that going for it. But I was looking at the key visual at about, like, that size, like the size of a thumbnail on Mal. And then I started watching the show, and boy, these character designs fucking suck. These are terrible. Now, granted, I'm watching apparently a flashback to start with, which I surmised by it being letterboxed. And the fact that the main character is like 6 years old or something right now, or probably a little older than that. I can't fucking tell anime ages anymore. I just can't. Unless they're in school, I can't tell how old they're supposed to fucking be. But none of the characters are likable at all so far. I don't know how far I watched, but I fucking hate everyone. Which, like, there are certain characters that you are supposed to hate. You're supposed to hate the tutor because she's strict and mean. I guess arguably you should hate the older brother because he's being very cold towards her, and like he's probably like scheming to get higher up in the social ladder because that's just what he looks like. But they don't really give any like positive traits to anyone else to like make it. No one sympathizes with the Princess Letitia or the soon-to-be princess at all. No one like tries to comfort her in any way when she gets shipped off from home to go be taught how to be a princess. And like, sure, that's probably the point, but it really makes me not like the vibe for the show. And I checked, this is supposed to be a comedy, and also probably a romance, I think. And there's really not anything funny happening yet. So, like, why? I don't get it. I don't get why you're going so heavy on the tone for this one when the setup is clearly not going to be that intense. Or maybe it will be. Maybe it will be intense. But if that's the case, I don't want to watch it even more because I hate everybody. So, fuck you.
Alright, princess lessons coming off the list. Let's do one more random before we roll into the next end cap. So let's see, we're gonna do 7. The Red Ranger becomes an adventurer in another world. That is a lot of genres being thrown together. A lot of tropes. Maybe it gives it like a special mixture that makes it come out surprisingly good. I hope so.
Okay, that one was definitely a bit of a surprise. I just finished up all of Red Ranger in Another World, or whatever the full title for this one is. Was not expecting this to be good at all, to be honest. Like, I expected this to just be a very kitschy, incongruous melding of different anime genres, specifically the isekai and the henshin transforming hero genre. I did not expect those to mesh very well at all. I expected this to be very gimmicky and dumb. And it started off that way a little bit, but overall, I think it is approached with enough sincerity and, more importantly, reverence and passion for the henshin trope that it worked out well in the end. Not all the time. I think there are definitely some places where it goes a little too much parody with the transforming hero genre. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, how have you survived this long in the world of anime, and how the hell are you watching this video? But we're talking Power Rangers, essentially. In Japan, there would be Super Sentai or Henshin transforming heroes, which technically also applies to magical girls, but we don't typically group those. Well, anyway, we're talking about Super Sentai style Henshin heroes, the team-based Power Ranger-y kind of stuff the Red Ranger from a Sentai team gets isekai'd, and shenanigans and cool fights ensue. It is very funny how, like, he is just immediately very overpowered in comparison to, like, most other stuff in this isekai world until you get to, like, the really strong enemies, which kind of makes sense because he is a Red Ranger who has been a Red Ranger for a very long time at this point. I think it's like, if I recall in the very first episode, they actually, like, defeat the big bad. The episode starts with them defeating their big bad, and, like, the Red Ranger sacrificing himself to do that. And that's the point at which he gets isekai'd. So, good to establish that at the start so that we have a already powered up Red Ranger. I like that he doesn't have to, like, I kind of like that he doesn't have to MacGuffin his way into getting his powers back. He just has all of his Red Ranger powers in the isekai world, whether it's summoning the giant robot or just the different special attacks that he has. Just because it's cool to see those. And the show, much like how Bravern really likes super robots and has a really strong appreciation for super robots, this show has a very strong appreciation for Sentai, and it's just very fun and hype to watch him do the Super Sentai stuff. Now, I mentioned it does go a little too far with, like, how parody it kind of is. At least in the beginning, like, it's just very over the top with the particular theme that they do. And, like, the theme that they go with for this particular batch of heroes is, like, bonds, like, relationships and stuff. Like, the bad guys they fight are the relationship enders. One of his, like, base attacks is, like, the handshake whatever, and, like, the marriage shot, the engagement shot, and just very corny, for lack of a better word. But as the series goes on, it actually does something with that. It actually develops the theme of bonds and, like, relationships with other people so that it actually, like, feels more natural within the story, especially as we get into the last couple episodes where it's, oh, my light just went out, forgot to plug it in, oh well. Whether it's like Rania and Azir's friendship / relationship ? And how that allows Rania to bring Azir back from the bad side to the good side, or the Red Ranger going berserk and turning into the Black Ranger at the end and just obsessing over not losing the bonds that he has, which was really fucking hype and cool. If you like Power Rangers and you like the tropes of Power Rangers and Transforming Hero stuff, you're probably going to like this show because it really hits all of them. And with the exception of going a little too far with the naming conventions, it does... it's clear that the show also likes it and wants to present it in a way that looks really cool. And it's not just there to make fun of it. Occasionally the characters will make fun of it for being outlandish and weird, but not to the extent where it feels like the writers dislike it, or the writers are, like, trying to shit on it. That's because I'm sorry, that's just something that I'm starting to appreciate more and more with isekai anime in particular, because a lot of them just don't seem to not like the fact that they are isekai anymore. Like, they poke at the tropes for the sake of poking at the tropes, not to say anything particularly interesting about them. And the lack of sincerity with a lot of modern isekai really drives me up the fucking wall. So the fact that this show is so sincere about its love for Super Sentai is very fun. And the isekai world that it comes up with is actually pretty interesting. I like the drama going on within the mage, with like the royal mage succession and whatnot. It's not a super interesting world in terms of like uniqueness, but it's like pretty well developed enough for me to actually care about world building when it does it, and like the specific like political actions taking place, like regulation of magic tools and outsourcing labor to other races. That the Sun Forest arc in the second half of this really was it felt relevant, felt a little too relevant for 2025, and it made Azir a very compelling and sympathetic villain in this back half, for what he's trying to accomplish with. Reminds me a lot of that one guy from Bungo Stray Dogs seasons 4 and 5. It's where it's like being completely dominant over everyone for the sake of peace and bringing everybody together. But obviously the Red Ranger cannot abide that, because he cannot abide oppression for the sake of world peace, because that's not really world peace, obviously. It's very fun. The fight scenes are very fun. They're not poorly animated, but they're not like exceptionally well animated either. I would put them in the realm of like a Sengoku Yoko kind of action scenes, where it's like there's not a ton of Sakuga going on, but the fights are like, the impacts are very competent and weighty, and some of the choreography is really strong, and the variety of attacks makes it so that it never feels monotonous or like repetitive or anything. It always feels like there's something new happening, and like they have to attack in a different way. Which is why I was so excited when they finally introduced another transforming hero in the second half of the series, with this Egyptian themed hero, whose name I've already... Amen. Which... that's a choice of name, I guess. I guess if you squint really hard, it sounds Egyptian, I guess. But I liked her gimmick of like all the different like coins with different hieroglyphs or like symbology on them, being able to swap them out for different powers. That one felt much more Kamen Rider-y than Super Sentai, which I think is the intent. Yeah, that's the other thing. So, if for some reason you're not super familiar with this stuff, there's essentially... I'm also not super familiar with it. But essentially, there's 3 different kinds of transforming heroes. You have magical girls, which obviously you're familiar with probably. You have the Super Sentai, which is the Power Rangers. And then you have the Kamen Rider, which is much more of like the individual hero as opposed to the Power Ranger, where it's the team of heroes. And then Magical Girl. Most magical girls draw a lot from the Super Sentai realm of transforming heroes. But then this Egyptian-themed character, Amen, draws a lot from the... Feels like it draws a lot from the Kamen Rider camp of transforming heroes. And... Yeah, I would say the second half was so much more fun, I guess. A, because we had gotten the introductory stuff over with, and B, it started to go a lot harder with the theme of bonds and relationships, so that the corniness of the naming schemes for the attacks didn't stand out quite as much. They were still definitely there those themes were still definitely there in the beginning, especially with, like, Logi, our Yusha, legendary hero character, who I found very fun, and his obsession with his princess being very endearing, and stopping just before the point where it gets creepy. All the supporting cast for this show is very fun. I liked Yidra as Red's main support character / love interest. Did they fuck in this show? I don't think they did. I think the implication is they didn't, but like the setup for it is that they fucked. But they really like dance around it to the point where we don't really get an answer. So did they fuck? I hope they did. 'Cause she's really hot. She's a big old titty mage character. Yeah, really fun show. Again, I briefly touched on the action scenes earlier in terms of like how they looked, and that's kind of a good gauge for the animation and artwork in general. It's not gonna blow you away with anything, and sometimes it does look a little bit off, but I would say on the whole it is a very competent production, which you know, very give and take or I should say very hit and miss when it comes to this studio. This is Satellite, which they're not really known for anything outside of Aquarian, I guess, is what they're really known for. They did the first season of Log Horizon before it got moved over to Studio Dean. But other than that, they're not really known for any... Oh, I think they're known for... What's that? Symphogear? I think that's one of their big projects. I'm not entirely sure. But, yeah, this is a very competent production. The editing's pretty solid, especially with some of the humor. Definitely got a lot of... The way stuff is cut together definitely got a lot of laughs out of me. Yeah, this is just a really fun isekai that shows a lot of reverence for the tropes that it is making fun of / employing in interesting ways. And I like they fight in the second half. Also, they start to like delve into how the henshin powers are like related to another type of power in the isekai world, and how they might be how they might be the same thing, and they start experimenting with recreating that power. So that was really interesting. There's a whole backstory with how this world had transforming heroes come, or it had otherworlders come to it thousands of years ago, and they were also transforming heroes. If this gets a second season, I will be definitely interested in seeing where it goes. They definitely set it up for a second season. I don't think they've announced the second season, but I wouldn't mind tuning in because this was pretty dang fun.
Alright, the Red Ranger Isekai is complete. Another surprise finish for the year. Or for the season, I should say. And we're going to put you in the number 4 spot with a decent 7. That was very fun. Okay. Now I think it's time we get to the next end cap, which is Medalist. I am a very big fan of the manga, but also I know this is being adapted by Studio NG, which is not a good studio. But I've also heard that this was a solid adaptation. So, please be good.
Alright, that certainly was an adaptation that I have many things to say about, both good and bad. I just finished up Medalist, and good show overall, despite all of the circumstances. I think I already mentioned it in the intro, but I am a big fan of the manga for Medalist. I have all of the volumes that are out currently in the US. It is a very, very damn good sports manga about figure skating. And I think, on the whole, the anime does capture a lot of what's really good about this manga. In particular, a lot of the character writing and how the characters sort of grow and change over the course of the series. I really liked their interpretation of Inori. I think it's very accurate to the spirit of the manga and how she starts off as this incredibly downtrodden, very socially awkward, and just completely self-doubting little kid who, through getting better at figure skating, and which is the only thing that she really seems to enjoy, becomes a more confident person herself. You can really see her growth over the course of the series very plainly in her acting, in the way that she presents herself, in the way she, in later episodes, like, inserts herself into discussions, or that she would normally just have shied away from. Really enjoyed that in this season. I will say, though, I have some qualms with how some of the drama was handled in this, because there are a lot of dramatic moments in the manga, but how do I put this? They felt much more abrasive in the anime. A lot of stuff came off a lot more bluntly, a lot more mean. And I think that has to do with who they chose as series composition for the series, which is Juki Hanada, who you have heard me talk about many times in the past on this series. He's good when he is in his element, in my opinion, which is high school melodramas for the most part. Sound Euphonium, Hanasaku Uraha, even a good chunk of Love Live. That is his wheelhouse. I don't necessarily think he was a bad choice for Medalist, but his tendency for very pointed melodrama definitely comes out a lot in this series. Although, I also am not entirely sure how much I can blame him for that, or even necessarily say that there is blame to be had, because of something that's not... This part I'm going to talk about for a very long time that is not necessarily part of the show, but it is going to be how you consume the show, which is that the official licensed subtitles for this series, which were done by Hulu, have taken very large liberties with the script. Like, to the point where it is very obvious. Like, the first instance where it really was, there was like a super obvious, like, deviation from the script where was like, it's in episode 3, or at least this is the first time that I caught this. I'm sure there was stuff in earlier episodes, but I just wasn't super tuned into it at that point. But when Inori's like introducing herself to the club and stuff, there's this kid, I think it's Sota, in the actual dialogue for the show. He says something like "Game o suki desu ka?" Which essentially he's asking her if she likes video games. And the subtitles change that to "Do you like anime?" And it's like, why would you change that? Like a superfluous change in the grand scheme of things, although you could also argue that it is something that because Sota later talks about having a Nintendo Switch, it would have made more sense with his character to keep the gamer line, to reinforce that he is a gamer, but he's also a super minor character, so it doesn't really matter. But the point is, why change that? Why change games to anime? It doesn't make any sense to just randomly change a piece of dialogue like that. And ever since that line, I noticed that they do it a lot. Like, I'm trying to remember all of them. But there are some really, like, egregious ones that really kind of change the tone of a scene in favor of, like, punching up dialogue, like comedic punch-ups. If you're not... When you say punch up the dialogue, it means, like, add a little more spice to it to make it, like, more comedic, more intense, something like that. Usually in terms of punch-ups, people are talking about, like, comedic punch-ups. Like, adding in a joke. Like, there's this scene where Inori and Tsukasa are, like, super excited about something, and they're dancing around on the sidewalk and stuff, and then Inori's mom pulls up, and they get, like, super embarrassed that someone saw them dancing around like fools. And in the dialogue, when they freeze in, like, embarrassment to it, Tsukasa says "nandemo nai," which essentially is like, it was nothing. Don't worry about that. Don't forget what you saw. Along those lines. And in the subtitles, they changed that to, it's leg day. Which, again, I get where they got that from, because they're doing, like, this thing with their feet and stuff. They're doing, like, these big high steps because they're very excited. But it's like, that's not what the dialogue is. That's not what the script is saying. So it's like, these for the record, I don't speak Japanese fluently. I have a very, very basic level of Japanese. I took a year and a half of it in college. But the fact that I am catching all of these changes to the script is concerning, because they are very obvious, like, punch-ups to the dialogue. And so it has me thinking, if I'm catching all of the very blatantly obvious stuff, then what am I not catching? Because I am only have a very basic knowledge of Japanese, what am I missing that they are just changing that actually has, like, bearings on character and story and such? And as a manga reader, there is stuff that I suspect, but I can't prove because I would have to bust out the fucking Google Translate and do that, and even that would be a really not great way to go about it, based on some very funny misconceptions of how of Japanese when you shove it into Google Translate that I saw recently. I can just talk about it. There was a post from the HoloLive card game Twitter, and they abbreviated Holo card as Horoka, and Google Translate thought that was Holocaust. Very funny way in which the machine doesn't understand what's being said. So I guess that's my obligatory machine learning bad, do not use machine learning for subtitles thing. That I don't think that's the solution for this at all. I hate machine translated subtitles. It's very obvious when they happen. Let me refer you back to that one comedy anime from a couple years ago. I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one where the machine translated thing said like what you are doing is a carcinogen. That one. So I don't think that's the solution, but also it makes me like skeptical of even recommending the official subtitles for this. Like, yes, Crunchyroll does take some liberties occasionally with their subtitles. The 100 Girlfriends Kendrick Lamar reference is probably the most obvious example of that, but that actually, like, it's 100 Girlfriends, so punching up is kind of the job for that show. You don't need to punch up Medalist because it's a sports drama with a little bit of comedy in it here and there. So, if you have suggestions on whose subtitles are more accurate, please recommend them in the comments below. I used Arai Raws for this, which I believe they usually just rip the subtitles directly from whatever streaming service has licensed the show. So I assume those are just ripped straight from Hulu. So I can't really recommend those. But also last season I tried using the Ember subs for Bleach Thousand Year Blood War, and those were just like grammatically incorrect very often. So I can't recommend those either. So I guess if you have any other suggestions, let me know in the comments below, because it makes me wonder if some of my complaints about how the dialogue was handled in this show are the result of the actual subtitles versus just the actual writing for the show. Because, like, Tsukasa's introduction, it comes off a much more, like, abrasive than it did in the manga. Now, granted, part of that is because they skip his actual introduction in the manga. Like, they skip his scene with Koga. I think that's what his name is, Koga, and Yo. That the people who he's boarding with for a while, they just cut that scene out of the manga, and we don't even meet those characters until like episode 6 or 7. So that could also be part of it. But, like, something about Tsukasa's first interaction with Inori feels much more abrasive, I guess is the word I keep coming back to, than it did in the manga. Now, granted, there is some scenes in the manga where it's like, oh, they're going in on the drama for this moment, and the anime does replicate those faithfully too, but, like, it just feels a little bit more, like, drama heavy than I was expecting based on the manga, and I don't necessarily think that's for the better in a lot of cases. Also because there are some it is pretty shaky editing wise. There are a lot of like hard cuts without like enough lead into next scenes or next shots and such. It's not all the time, but it does happen frequently enough to throw me off balance or make me go like, whoa, what just happened? Why are we doing this now? Which brings me to Studio NG. This is perhaps one of the worst studios currently working in the anime industry right now, which is why everyone was fucking terrified when they heard that that Medalist was being handled by NG. I can't name any of their shows off the top of my head. I think they did By the Grace of the Gods, which wasn't a terrible looking production, but certainly wasn't a good one. They've done a lot of really terrible shows, and Medalist is like in NG's like 6 or 7 year history so far of handling like over a dozen shows at this point. Medalist is the first Studio NG show that I finished. And not to just completely dismiss them, because they did put in a lot of work to make this adaptation work. The character designs are really crisp and vibrant looking, pretty faithful to the manga in terms of how they're adapted. There was occasionally some jank in like the back third of the series, but not too much. I do wish they had been a little bit more adventurous with the color design, because a lot of the presentation of a lot of stuff feels... I hate when I have to describe something this way. It's just like, it just feels off. It feels like it is not... It feels like the color design or the compositing or like the set design or the lighting or something needed like a couple more passes, because a lot of stuff just feels slightly off. And I don't really know how to describe it other than that. I do think a lot of it is the color choices, because they're not bad color choices, they're just very I guess standard color choices. And it needed a little bit more oomph, because Medalist is a very fucking beautiful manga. Like, it's got a very, like, sketchy art style, but the art itself is, like, extremely impacting and mesmerizing, especially in, like, how it conveys the movement of the figure skating segments. Actually, what was the scene that I was thinking of in particular? Where is that? There's a... Yeah, this was probably the first time I noticed the... I'm sorry, I'm getting super into the weeds of it, but... fuck it. It's my show. I run this show how I want. It's like, Mitten's turn in the manga, like, the cut from her talking to Inori to her showing off how good she is just this very seamless instance, and it felt very jarring in the anime, and again, extremely impacting artwork. And not to say that the anime doesn't have impacting artwork, because it certainly does. They certainly do try their damnedest to make the skating scenes really fucking good, and a lot of times it works. Like, I would say all of Hikaru's scenes are really fucking good. They just make her absolutely mesmerizing and almost otherworldly in how she is drawn and how the camera captures her face and her dancing and skating and such. But the other characters, it's not perfect, because most of the figure skating scenes in this are done with CG. And it's CG that is very reminiscent of, I guess, something... it reminds me a lot of, like, Idolmaster, like some of the newer Idolmasters stuff where they do the CG dance sequences. Not quite Love Live-ish, because of the character designs make me think more in line with Idolmaster. Inori in particular. So it reminded me a lot of that, and a lot of the movements felt very robotic. And again, a lot of this comes down to CG assets have a different frame rate than regular animation, or regular typical animation, I should say. Like, it has a much higher frame count, and so it's like very obvious when it comes up, because it just looks unnatural compared to the things around it. And so, like, a lot of the arm flourishes, and stuff like that looks very mechanical at times, and takes away a lot of the beauty from the dancing sequences. But I will say the actual, like, the camera work is really fucking good during these figure skating sequences. It really captures the, like, raw, like, the awe and wonder of watching figure skating. Because, like, I actually love figure skating. It's one of my favorite Olympic sports. Might actually be my favorite Olympic sport. At least for the Winter Olympics. So I'm a big ice skating fan. But it certainly captures, like, the intensity of the art very well. And it's not like it was impossible for them to do it in 2D. Like, not, like, in theory, it's not, because they do an entire sequence with Ryo in just regular 2D animation at the very end, and it looks fucking gorgeous. Like, in the final episode they do it, and it looks really fucking good. The compositing was a little rough, like, in terms of him against the background, but every time they do a skating sequence, the rink itself is always CG, whether the character model is CG or not, so it's not really, I guess, in terms of that, it's an issue of when the character model is CG, then the entire area just looks like a completely different realm, almost. In that sense, it is a little bit like Love Live, in that the Love Live music sequences just go full, like, music video aesthetic, and it just, like, completely removes itself from the context of from the physical context of the scene. But that's not what's happening in Medalist. Versus when the character models are in 2D, there are some mild compositing issues, but actually in that instance in particular, I think the color design was really fucking good, actually. So I hate that I don't quite have the vocabulary to fully describe what I don't like about this adaptation. Because, like, on the whole, I do think it's still good. It is still good. And often very good. Like, again, Inori's character arc is extremely solid. I really liked the personalities of all the different skaters that she encountered, and their different stories in the lead up to how they've gotten into skating, how they've gotten to where they are at this point. I will say the anime cuts out a lot of the technical details that are in the manga, which I'm not opposed to, because that really does, like, slow you down a lot when you're reading the manga, because they just go into technical details about everything. But also, there's stuff that you really shouldn't cut. Like, they cut out the explanation of what GOE is, as far as I can remember, but they keep using that as like a rallying cry almost, multiple times in the show. And since I've completely forgotten what that means, it just kind of left me wondering, like, wait, what does that mean again? So either they just cut it out completely, or they did a really bad job of explaining what it meant, and I just, like, completely missed it. So, yeah. Honestly, though, this is still far better of an adaptation than I was expecting from NG, because this is also from a director that I don't think is typically very good. Like, he did the second season of Squid Girl, which was good, but also he's done stuff like Protocol Rain, which was a fucking, I think was that terrible esports anime from a while ago. His resume is not particularly impressive. And also, it's Studio NG, so they are very terrible at, like, production, the production side of things. Like, I got curious, and so I was looking for the character designer at one point on my anime list, and I was going like, okay, animation director, animation director, animation director, how many fucking animation directors are there? 39! There are 39 different animation directors for this show. That is 13 episodes long. So that's an average of 3 unique directors per episode. And you know a lot of them worked on more than one. That is not a sign of a healthy production. So it's kind of amazing that this got out the door with as little jank as it has. It is genuinely impressive that they were able to pull this together, because I expected nothing. I expected this to be bad. So in that sense, I am pleasantly surprised. I still have a lot of, like, gripes about it. God, I'm still trying to remember all the other stuff I wanted to talk about this show, because I don't want to just hype on the animation constantly, because I do want to point out this has a Yuki Hayashi score, and honestly it's probably one of his least impressive scores so far. It's not bad. I do have some questions about some of the, like, music choices for, like, the dance scenes, like the in-universe music choices. Some of those I wasn't a particularly big a fan of, like Ryo's set. I did not like the music for that all that much. But the actual, like, background music is just kind of average fare in terms of, like, Yuki Hayashi stuff, in that I really didn't notice it all that much. Occasionally you get the big string swells and hype that he's known for, but other times it's just kind of there. It's doing its job, I guess, because it got me hyped enough to get through the whole show. And again, I did like this overall. I do think there's a whole lot to love here. Again, like, I genuinely really enjoyed all the characters. I loved how its approach as a sports manga to the sport and art of figure skating. Yeah, it's just, I was going to have criticisms about this show either way, I guess, because I knew it wasn't going to fully satisfy me. But you know what? It did get It got me all the way through the first season, and I think the back half of this really picked up steam. Uh, Purely because the source material is just that good. I really enjoyed the complicated feelings that Ryo has towards all of the adults in his life. I love this very natural friendship slash rivalry between Inori and Hikaru. Or Hikari. Um, yeah, this was good. I should stop rambling now because I'm just talking myself in circles now. Find some good subtitles for it. Ask around in the community, I guess. And hopefully you won't be maybe you won't be bothered by it as much as I am, but I really don't like the subtitle work that was done for this series. I think it takes far too many liberties and becomes a somewhat different show as a result. But that aside, I'm happy that this adaptation did not completely tank. Based on the fact that the director is trying to recruit animators for Season 2 through Twitter right now, probably not a good sign of how Season 2 is going to go. But I will be there.
Alright, Medalist is complete. We're going to scroll up to the number 3 spot and give you a strong 7. And that is a very strong 7. I could see myself maybe bumping it up to a light 8, but also there's just a lot of very minor things that compounded to make it not quite as good as I was hoping, but still way better than I was expecting.